Chapter 13. The rhinoceros played tag until the small group of small children eventually wound their way to the chapel. Bro noted the front crest of the door was adorned with symbols of the Star of David, the Christian cross, the Buddhist and Taoist yin-yang, the Celtic pentacle, the Islamic crescent and star, and an Egyptian ankh, and several other religious symbols he simply didn't recognize. The multiple-limbed, multiple-eyed kids went inside the chapel to find their parents. The brief novelty of the walking, talking rhinoceros having worn off, the young Jadoon looked over to the nearby cemetery, and he noticed that every single plot had been wrenched open, torn. Every headstone and grave marker was displaced disgracefully. Muddy dirt mixed with the noxious smell of long dead, and Bro had had enough. He decided to bail, but not before glancing over to notice Professor Green and the magistrate surveying the same horrendous, nightmarish scene. Bro waved at the Time Lord in the Viridian suit and turquoise tie. Professor Green didn't wave in kind, but turned his attention to the 118 completely decimated burials. He was busy interrogating the magistrate, it seemed. The rhinoceros walked along Dragon's Teeth's thoroughfare, his heavy feet causing the crimson wood planks to creak and crack under his weight. Bro was barely able to squeeze through the old Western-style saloon doors of the understyled inn. Saber sat at a nearby table, sipping a frosty mug of ale. The excited rhinoceros stomped over toward her. "What are you up to?" The time agent said. "Just having a beer, bro." The rhino form sat next to her, the seat creaking unsteadily underneath him. Bro looked over at JB Understyled, the two-headed owner, and raised a gigantic gray paw, as if to order a tasty beverage himself. Saber, still looking at the violet sunset and the mint sky, raised her voice. "He's too young." Bro's head slumped. "Oh." A splintering crack filled the bar, and the chair shattered under the rhinoceros, sending him to the floor. Professor Green was intently gazing at the devastated, smashed burial plots. Magistrate Necessary nervously took another sip from his flask. A southern accent resonated from behind the pair. "Little early, isn't it?" Floyd Necessary spit out in surprise. The magistrate and the outsider in Viridian turned to see the constable. "I'll Bithaway." A tall Asian man with 4 arms extended one toward Professor Green. "Name's Taylor. Taylor Bithaway." "I'm Inspector Green." The stranger in the jade suit lied. "Simply here to verify that your superheated plasma containment units are up to new standards. They were implemented on Apple Alpha Gamma Gamma Banana Sigma the 11th AD CE 4039, you know." "Of course. I remember getting the briefing last week. On the 80th of Orange Epsilon, I think." The 4-armed constable lied. Professor Green waved his exclamation mark jade cane around, dismissing one topic in favor of another. He indicated the atrocious scene. "I fear, however, gentlemen, that you may have a much larger issue at hand here." The 4-eyed magistrate was sweating profusely. Despite the enormous setting purple sun already bringing on a cool evening, Necessary took another, longer, searching swig. Constable Bithaway looked over at him. "I don't know. It may seem like a gentle joke at first, Mr. Mayor, but if you don't watch that daytime drinking..." "Enough!" Magistrate Necessary roared at the constable, all 4 eyes bulging. Having lost his cool and garnered the unwanted attention of some crying children and gasping parents, the local leader simply cleared his throat, and stormed off. Professor Green followed Constable Bithaway into his office. It was a cramped, efficient version of the Old West Sheriff's office. 3 small holding cells sat empty with open, free-swinging cast-iron gates. The other wall was filled with dozens of rows of filing cabinets. The center of the room held the constable's cluttered desk, opposite 2 folding chairs. Constable Bithaway did not see much action. Sitting at the constable's desk was a young woman in bright neon, almost garish pink overalls and a matching pink sports bra. She didn't notice them come in, her feet propped up on the constable's desk. Professor Green noted that she was, like everyone else in this town, of Asian and African American descent, but, unlike all the other inhabitants of Dragon's Teeth, she had no extra limbs, eyes, or a tail. "Brianna," Constable Bithaway said. Nothing. "Brianna," he yelled. She pulled a bright pink headphone from her ear. The constable sighed. "I thought you were excited to get your own place. You just turned 20 and all." Brianna Bithaway stood. "You know I don't like guns, Dad." The constable motioned toward the inspector in the green suit. "This is Mr. Green. He's here to..." Without actually looking at the stranger in the emerald suit, Brianna slapped his extended hand, snapped her fingers, and pointed at him. "Word." The young woman in pink abruptly left, the heavy red wooden door slamming shut behind her. "Pleased to meet you," Professor Green said to the door. He spun on a heel, aiming his outstretched hand toward the constable's desk. 4-armed Constable Bithaway sat at his desk, his 4.6 shooters dangling at his side. Before he'd noticed, Professor Green was sitting opposite of him, and the stranger's eyes began glowing. It was a soft turquoise shade which had turned brighter into an emerald glow, and the constable found himself entranced in the way that Professor Green's pupils could barely be seen over the viridian haze. "Tell me what you know," the outsider in the jade suit uttered. The constable began with moving to the planet Dragon's Blood about 10 years ago, his wife, a diplomat from Zimbabwe, dying in childbirth shortly thereafter. He found himself all too willing to share his feelings about his daughter Brianna, how she grew up at twice the rate of a normal child, his feelings on her disabilities, born with no extra eyes, nor arms, nor a tail. The accidental Time Lord waved away the thoughts dismissively. "My dear sir, as interesting as you think your daughter is, I'd much rather discuss the here and now." Before the constable's eyes, Professor Green split into 2, one of them slightly transparent. The see-through shadow of the Time Lord was investigating the cells. Professor Green said, "The monster in Blood Redwoods." Constable Bithaway nodded and continued. Much to his astonishment, he no longer needed to speak. His memories themselves seemingly instantly understood. And, much to his astonishment, there was another shadow of the mysterious Inspector in Emerald, this one rifling through his file cabinets. This 3 static-ridden, ghost-like versions split again, becoming 6. The Time Lord kept reading through the constable's memories, skimming, as if speedily glancing through a magazine. Cattle mutilations, strange noises in the night, screams from the shadows in the crimson forest that could not be identified. And now, an entire cemetery, robbed of 118 bodies. And nothing coming even remotely close to any kind of explanation. Constable Bithaway became so very tired watching the sight of the multiple Professor Greens before him. He yawned. The mysterious traveler in the green suit placed his finger upon his lips and uttered, "Shush," as his eyes pulsed viridian energy. Constable Bethaway fell asleep at his desk.